On behalf of the captain and the crew, we'd like to welcome you on board Flight 069, now departing to that club miles high in the sky. Cabin crew, arm doors, and cross-check.
Thank you for listening to us today. If this is the first time listening to this podcast, welcome aboard. If you're a returning listener, we're glad you're back. Seat 1A provides tips and tricks from more than 5 million miles worth of flying to help you take off from the crowd.
In today's experience, recorded on the 8th of January, 2023, we're going to have a look at passengers who wanted in that infamous club.
And then we'll wrap up with news about the world of aviation.
Well, finally, episode 69. We've been waiting a long time to do this one.
Yes. And, funny numbers come up, and the question also arises. Besides Denver, that's a mile high above sea level, does the club exist? And have you seen it?
Having been a former active cabin crew member, I will officially say yes, the Mile High Club does exist. So, yeah, don't worry. We're not going to get too explicit, but we'll probably push the borders of what our podcast allows. But hopefully this will be some good entertainment.
That I can still keep it with a clean rating on
yes.
sites. Yes. So.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, obviously we're wondering, do people that travel, that work in the industry, and then passengers, what happens when they want to get a little bit more than friendship, a bit more intimacy.
Take off and chill.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to put it from your IFE, right? I mean, there's so much that goes on, and I think this goes way back to, when the golden age of flying was emerging. Beautiful, primarily almost all female flight attendants and handsome, strapping male pilots touting around
long
the world.
Distances from home and multi-legs and exotic locations that you don't normally ever get a chance to visit.
Yeah. Nice hotels, 5-star hotels, and, eating and drinking their lives away and wonderful times. So, yeah, the stigma is there. And that's part of the sexyism of, working in the industry, is being able to kind of be a part of that magic in the world, I guess.
Yeah. And, a lot of airlines, especially, in the golden age, I mean, flight attendants under the age of 30 and, young strapping pilots, as you mentioned. So yeah, of course, everybody's all young and eager to get it on after the liftoff, right?
There's gonna be so many of these in this one. Yeah, let's look at it from the crew perspective first. So let's from a technical side, let's look at this. Who are generally the airline crews that you see out there? For the most part, the majority, let's say are 40 and under. And for a lot of airlines, they recruit your 20 to 25-year-olds.
Yes.
And it's still predominantly a female-dominated workforce. Even in 2023, yes, it's diversifying and in all days of equality and et cetera. But for the most part, it's a young world in terms of the demographic. And, what does it take to be a flight attendant? Of course, when I became a flight attendant, I was single, unmarried, unattached. And that was, again, part of the dream of joining this thing is, you have no strings attached. You kind of have to be to sort of live that dream if that's what you're aiming for.
And to live that life and know that it's like, well, I'm going to be here, or I could be here, or like I've got a phone call at 5 a.m. I need to jump on a plane
and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to be delayed, or your life's just going to be literally in fluid motion the whole time. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just the nature of it. And that's what flight attendants, that's how it is. A lot of them come from, so many different walks of life. In some nations, these are people that have gotten the chance to come from maybe a background that their family, just couldn't afford to get them into, I don't know, something else. And this is their one chance to kind of sorry, when I say their family couldn't afford, meaning the opportunity to travel and, you know, jet set. Well, this is their chance to get out there and do that. So it's a big deal for a lot of cabin crew members to be out there living it. And then from the pilot side, again, it's, you know, primarily male dominated industry. And it has been, well, pretty much since the dawn of time. Of course, now, you know, it's great. We're seeing more and more and more female pilots coming into the foray, which is awesome. And it's a non-issue, but just simply the in a general broad stroke, the demographic is like that. So when you know, as crew, you go places, and from a technical side, when you are a crew on a layover somewhere, a layover being anything as short as 11 hours, all the way up to
A week?
a week, yeah, depending on where you're going. The airline and most airlines, you know, you're talking your flag carriers and all, will put you up in a 5-star or a 4-star. And by that I mean like your Westin, your Hiltons, your Sheratons, and Fairmont hotel chains of the world. So you're staying in a pretty nice place too. And yes, you are in your own single room because you are strangers. You know, a lot of time when you come together as a crew,
You haven't flown with these people ever before, and it's
exactly, especially when you're new, you know, eventually you get to know, but everyone has their own life and they're going to do their own thing on the layover. And it's for each individual to choose what they want to do on the layover. So we would always try to coordinate and plan, especially if there were friends, you know, where are we going? What are we doing? Obviously, if it's 11 hours and you're just going to like go to your room and sleep. But if it's, you know,
yeah, if you're on like a charter, or if you're on like off to a hotspot somewhere, and it's like, okay, my plane's landing here, and then the passengers are getting dropped off, and I'm coming back with the passengers that I dropped off.
Exactly. And so when you go to these places, yeah, and that's part of why you do the job. You want to go out and travel and see the world and experience it. Yes, you obviously the flight is part of it, but then that's the incentive is, yeah, okay, maybe the pay is not the best and you're working an absolutely bizarre style of life, but you're in one city to another or one resort or one climate to another continent to another, and you're just experiencing, and that was the best part of it and will continue to be for as long as there is cabin crew.
And when you like, if you had an opportunity to select routes based on, say, seniority or otherwise, you know, being able to say, well, I haven't been here or haven't been here in a while.
Yeah.
Let's
and
go.
Then you add it on. Yeah. Absolutely. And the same applies for the pilots. I mean, why else do you fly a plane? Is you want to go somewhere and experience. I mean, it's cool to fly the plane. Absolutely.
Yeah. And especially, you know, the wide body planes, the intercontinental flights. I mean, those pilots flying, you know, all of those particular ones. All right. You know, everywhere and anywhere. Yeah,
exactly. So, you know, each crew member is clearly responsible for their own actions, and, you know, they need to be fit to fly and ready to report for duty at the right time to operate whatever in their next flight sector is. In between, they're landing in that point in time. You know, it's a free world and people can do what they want. So, you know, what do you do as crew? There's dinners, there's shopping, you go see friends. How many times have I come to Toronto and bounced out and, you know, you and I have met up and stuff like that?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, I've gone to visit family. I've done nothing. I've sat in my room plenty of times, just on my own, relaxing, gym, whatever, you know, it's just life. So then we go into where things start to get fun. So, you know, this is the groundwork is you have individuals out there that are exploring the world and doing their thing, you know, basically in a constant state of travel. And inevitably, the sparks of romance or attraction will fly here and there. And do crew members hook up outstation? Sure, they do. It's natural. Everyone, you know, people.
Yeah, there's stress and interactions and relationships. I mean,
exactly.
They go beyond just work relationships.
Yeah, but you got to be careful because, you know, if you're with that crew and you're starting to do these kind of things and you continue to operate these flights, you got to make sure you know what you're doing if you want to do that. So, you know, we'd always have that saying, "Don't screw the crew." But
right.
you can you can do a different crew if you want. And so that
But
brings me
yeah,
to
because I can
the
imagine, I mean, just the opportunity for very cold and hostile working environments if things went wrong or sideways.
oh yeah. I mean, the first airline I worked with, it was a definitely a smaller one, and we'd go to all the hot spots: Cancun, Montego Bay, Varadero, Cuba, Puerto Vallarta. The list goes on, and we'd have at least 24 hours,
Mm.
sometimes 42, 48, sometimes 72 hours at an all-inclusive resort, alcohol included, at a beach in the hot sun, and there I've been to wild parties galore. And yeah, you need to have a bit of smarts about you because it's a small crew base. So if you start meddling around, word's going to spread and all
People
the
don't want to work
whole,
with you, or it'll be difficult to get your job done.
yeah, internal gossip, right?
Yeah.
But where things got interesting is when you'd have multiple crews coming in. So, these flights would all go to the same places. And, we'd rock into Cancun and there would be 4 or 5 other flight crews showing up within the next 4 hours, all for the evening layover. Because generally the timing from Canada to those places, most flights, they would leave in the morning, go down, crew switch, and then the plane returns home. So that leaves you there for the night. So now you have, on a 737 crew, how many were we? We were 5 at that time. So let's say 5 flights showed up. That's 25 crew members plus pilots. That doesn't even include the pilots.
Yeah.
That's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That's 35 people all there for the same goal.
Yes.
Yes. So add a bit of alcohol into that and off to the races you go.
Yeah.
So it was fun. I mean, leaving our subject matter side, it was just fun to be out there and young and partying and, go to the nightclubs and all this crazy stuff. But occasionally things would get silly and people would make bad decisions, and some people would get themselves fired. Let's be honest. Yeah.
Well, and I also know in the layover experience you talked about, people being in the condition to fly the next day and having had far too many margaritas or whatever to be able to fly the next day.
That's a very good point. And this practice brings us back to that point of the demographic part. I mean, when you start off as crew, you're generally young, quote unquote, young to the industry, or maybe you're young in age. And when you think about your pursers, your senior pursers, your chem crew managers, they've generally flown for a while. They're a more senior crew. And with that comes age. And part of that then is on these layovers, the crew manager needs to keep an eye on their crew, as does the captain. So together they work as a team to make sure that their crew is enjoying themselves, absolutely, but within the bounds. And that by the time the report time the next day, all the regulatory bits about how long you can consume alcohol to, and there is regulatory bits. You cannot consume alcohol within, I think it's 12 or 14 hours of a flight.
Yeah, it depends on the country. And
yeah. So as a crew manager, I'd have to kind of keep an eye on that on my crews, depending where we're going, checking with the captain. Occasionally, of course, there were pursers and crew managers themselves that would negate the rules or join in the fun too. Mm-hmm. So to each their own. I mean, these are things that happen down the line. Cancun, it always comes back because that's where all the crazy stuff would happen. I mean,
well, because you have, not just Canadian ones. I mean, you got pretty much flights from everywhere coming into Cancun from
absolutely
Canada, the US, and Europe.
Yeah. And, which hotels are they at?
Yeah.
Or a lot of time, you go out into town and you meet other crews. We went to Barbados and the Virgin crew would stay at the same hotel as us.
Okay.
So, you change out, you do your thing, beach thing, and then you're at like the bar area and you can kind of pick out a crew pretty much instantly. You're like, yeah, see a bunch of younger ladies, bunch of older men, three or four of them, and a few older women. I'm like, and no like partners. I'm like,
Yeah.
pretty sure that's a crew. And you kind of listen and you
And
hear
they're
them,
all talking to each other. It's like, yeah, that's just
yeah,
not a
with the British
random.
accent. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a yeah. So on one layover, actually, we combined. So our crew and the Virgin crew, we combined. We went out dinner, had a great time. Nothing crazy happened, but I mean, it's just as an example of how. And again, everyone has their own room.
Yeah.
Everyone is an adult and free to make their own decisions as to what they want to do. In Cancun, one of the crew members, she was a friend of mine, opted one night to hook up with one of the hotel staff.
All right.
Yeah, and that started to happen, and apparently it happened multiple times. I think security caught her and this guy in a stairwell doing things. So
Oh,
that was
wow.
rather embarrassing.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Another one, she was on the dance floor of the little nightclub in the hotel and started to like, well, how do I say this? Dirty dance
Yeah. Okay.
with the bartender. And next thing you know, like her top was off.
Good grief. Wow.
I'll just say her top was off and he was still dancing with her.
All right. Well, I mean, some people, they need to cool off when it gets really warm, I guess.
Right? Yeah. What else happened in Cancun? We have the beach bar and famous, all these all-inclusive places. They're just hardwired programmed to provide this level of entertainment where you have like the tequila shot thing and a girl will lie down on the bar and they'll put the bloody shot in the belly button and then the guy has to do the shot in between her legs to get the whole silliness of all that. Well, one of our crew was that girl. Yeah. The next thing you know, she like was dancing on the bar. And again, to each their own, but where she sealed her fate was she started screaming, "I'm a crew member for
blank."
Yeah. And I love coming to Cancun, and boom. Unfortunately, listening was someone from one of the other crews that was also there who happened to be on the safety committee or something.
Mm-hmm.
Caught wind of that, and that just went up the chain like wildfire when everyone landed back in Canada. And this girl actually got terminated. That was the end of her. So, we've kind of gone on a tangent here, especially at these all-inclusive resort type layovers. You got to be really conscious of who else is around, because are these your passengers?
And especially these days with, TikToks and all sorts of other video recording capabilities, as opposed to say, 25 years ago.
Yeah, you could just deny it.
Like,
no,
like,
that was
no, I
else.
got the pictures right here.
Yeah, is this you? Good grief. Yeah, so we really, we debrand and stuff. And yeah, people get together, they do things. Now, that's, we've flown off there to that all-inclusive thing. But there's also been these fables of these crew rooms in hotels, these party rooms. And I will say they do exist. So what this is in these, usually more in like the airport hotels, but I guess depends on the city. So, Emirates will use the same hotel as BA, as Lufthansa, as Air Canada, these sort of large, high volume hotels. And part of the hotel selection for an airline is to have a recreation type room, like a spot where a crew member, I'd love to compare this on paper to in reality, but there's supposed to be provision for a microwave and a fridge and maybe a TV and a place for the crew member to relax. Well, let's just take that to reality. So basically, this is essentially a room that, in theory, is where crew members can come together and mingle.
Networking, eh?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've been to the one where was it? In LaGuardia.
Okay.
Or not in LaGuardia, but when I would fly to LaGuardia, I think it was like a Holiday Inn. And this crew room was very, how do I call it? Bleak. Okay. I mean, it was just kind of like a leftover hotel conference room. It had a pool table, some horribly uncomfortable leather chairs.
Jeez, it sounds screen. Like the cafeteria you had to sleep at LaGuardia when you got stuck there.
Pretty much. Bright fluorescent light, tile floor. Like, it wasn't very inviting. So you kind of just go there, you eat your lunch, you kind of just say hi to people in the passing. But then you go to other rooms. So where was one I went to in Los Angeles was at the Westin by the airport. It was the first time I went into this. I didn't know that this hotel had one. And finally, one of my colleagues was like, hey, because I think I was asking about a fridge. I was like, hey, is there a fridge? Yeah, I go use the fridge in the crew room. I'm like, there's a crew room? Oh, I walked in and I was like, why do I only have an 11-hour layover this time? Damn it. It was just everything you expect. It was a nice loungy setup. The lights were kind of dim. There was like
Loungish.
yeah, couches, TVs, dining table, nice sort of kitchen setup, bar setup. And okay, there wasn't a full blown crazy like party that was going to lead to like, who knows what. But I think it wasn't Emirates. It was, I don't know, maybe it was Air France. There was an Air France crew. And when I say crew, I don't necessarily mean the whole crew, but let's just say crew members are there.
Yeah, but I mean, if you've got a wide body coming in, I mean, that's a
like 10, 12,
decent selection, a number of people anyway, even if it's only some of them.
Exactly. And they were getting into the wine and they had some snacks out that they brought. I was like, this is great. This is the scene that I've kind of always, wondered if it existed. And other people were starting to arrive. I'm like, damn it. And this is like 8 p.m. And I'm well into my alcohol cutoff at this point. And I was in uniform. I was like tired from the day of flying. Like,
and your flight's the next morning at like 8 or something.
Exactly. It was like just a minimum turn. I'm like, duh, why did I need to come and use the fridge? But then the next time I went on the same hotel, same layover, I went to that room. There was not a soul in there.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's just, the dynamics of a perfect storm of, whether people are going to get together. And so from there, the party starts and who knows what happens. Where was another one?
I was thinking when you were talking about all this, because you were, did a bunch of things in Calgary as a station manager. Was it did you take it from a different, like, was it approached by a different angle for you or was like all the hotels and things all handled, say, out of London?
You're right. They were all handled out of London. And really once that crew left the airport, that was the end of it. There was never any sort of like, hey, we're having a get together later. You're invited.
Okay.
In that sense, or we never got any reports. But, the British Airways crew coming into Calgary, was Calgary the place to be doing this kind of thing? Not necessarily, because the weather was usually not that type of thing. And people wanted to go off and do their own thing. That being said, though, funnily enough, and this has nothing to do with, the Mile High Club, but I actually connected with a lot of pilots and we would do a lot of hiking.
Right. And I know you mentioned in a previous experience when you were like flying or doing like Mount Kilimanjaro.
That was my practice hikes.
That was your practice hikes. And then that ended up leading you to get a darn good
upgrade.
First class seat in an British Airways flight from London to Nairobi.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I'd pick them up at the hotel. We'd go for half the day, hike, come back, drop them off. They'd get their rest, and then we'd see them later. So I remember one time this is like 2005 or 6. Well before I, was a cabin crew member, I was working in the industry. I was in Colombo, Sri Lanka, on my own, and I was at the Renaissance Hotel. I was at the pool, just doing my thing. And on the side, on this one, rectangle, this one side, there was like this group having a gay old time. Wonderful, beautiful girls in bikinis, the drinks with the bloody umbrellas, the mini umbrellas, guys there with like, Gucci sunglasses.
Yeah.
Good looking guys too. I'll give them that. And they were like having a really good time. Like, oh, who are these people? Because, Colombo, Sri Lanka, I'm like, who's here? Couples and stuff, like just randoms. And then I kind of listened, looked, and I figured out it was an Emirates crew.
Okay. Back
And
whenever it's
mm-hmm, yeah, and they were doing
was
their thing.
money was making it rain all the time at Emirates, right? In the mid
Yeah,
two
yeah, yeah.
thousands, right?
So I was so jealous. I'm like, oh, one day. So I never had the chance to work on a crew of that size and such exotic locale, but it's out there. It exists.
Yeah.
Now things can go awry though. Absolutely. Like I'm sure we could dive into legalities and pull up a room full of accusatory things that have happened between
People.
colleagues,
Yeah.
people. Yeah. I think it's still common practice that with a lot of the Asian airlines, the pilots stay at a different hotel than the cabin crew, simply purely because of this
Because of all of
whole
this, yeah.
all this kind of stuff. Because obviously, especially these, the sexual harassment is a huge issue that can't be ignored, and it's absolutely valid. So, yeah, I'm sure history has documented so much negative things that have happened, especially in some cultures. The senior male captain pilot has this sort of dominance
Yeah.
behavior, and you have like sort of the expectation that there's like the subservient, cabin
Yeah.
crew member.
Cabin crew, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that still comes to play. You see it in some airports when a crew comes in, where the captain walks in the front, and by pecking order, everyone is generally behind that person.
Yeah, it's like a flock of geese or something.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of bizarre. I don't want to say it's disturbing, but it's also just kind of mind-boggling that in 2022, 2023,
Yeah.
this is commonplace.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got to be careful. I mean, even working for the airline I worked with, the WestJet, there I think it's still not resolved, but there was a case of a crew member, and she actually did a full court case for sexual harassment against a pilot for that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, I mean, wish you could say it didn't happen, but it does. It's out there.
Yeah.
So the Mile High Club, yeah, we can glamorize and laugh and joke about it, but unfortunately,
But there's obviously the other side, that other serious side as well.
yeah. So now what happens with this? What's a cabin crew or crew and passengers?
Well, that's always the trope that you see thrown around. It's like, oh, just write my number, write my email or something on a napkin and give it to the crew, and we'll hook up afterwards, right?
Well, funny you mentioned that. Mark your words. So I was working a flight. It was something very simple. Let me think. Like Fort McMurray, Alberta to Edmonton, I think.
Like an hour flight.
Just an hour flight. It was an evening flight. The lights were dark. It was just like a commuter flight. It was nothing. Like barely any service, right? And I had this crew, colleague, this very good looking redhead female. I don't remember her name. And I was working in the front, and this one guy right in the front, I think, or maybe second row, he stopped me. He's like, "Do you have a pen and paper?" I was like, I can find one, but what can I help you with? Like, no, I just need a pen and paper. And I think we're about to start getting ready to prepare for descent. So we were kind of in the wrapping things. I'm like, I gotta find. Okay, sure. I don't know why. Oh, and his English was kind of so-so. Yeah, English wasn't his first language. So I dug around in my crew bag. I found a pen. I found a paper. Probably some from hotel, God knows where.
Yeah.
I gave it to the guy. Okay. And then a few minutes later, he gives it back to me. He's like, "Can you please give this to her?" I'm like, "Excuse me?" What? To who? He's like, "The one with the red hair." I'm like, "Okay, sure." Kind of awkward. I'm like, "What am I supposed to do?" And so she was at the front. I'm like, "Buddy in whatever 2C says this is for you." I'm kind of trying not to laugh. She's like, WTF. I'm like, "I don't know, man." Like, he wanted a pen and paper here. So she's like, "Let's look at it." And he basically wrote, I don't know, I'll just paraphrase, but essentially in broken English, something like, "You are so beautiful." I think maybe put his number and his name,
Yeah.
something like that. I was like, "Oh, okay, sure, whatever." And she's like, "He's actually kind of good looking." I'm like, "Oh, okay, whatever." So the plane landed, and I don't know, I kind of just forgot. And we come off the plane. He's there. He's waiting outside at the gate. I'm like, "Uh-oh. Now we've come into like, is this guy gonna like start stalking her?"
Yeah.
Apparently she told him to wait at the gate. I'm like, "Oh, okay." And we didn't leave as a crew. Like, she said, "I'll take the next shuttle."
Yeah.
And she ended up like connecting with this guy. And fast forward, they got married.
Oh, well.
Like, I don't know when, a few years later, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So I just found that. So I mean, it's funny you joked about it, but it's true. That stuff still happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Thank
funny.
goodness. Well, I mean, good. Thank goodness for them. You had a pen and paper.
Right? I'm like, why wasn't I invited to the wedding? Because without my pen and paper, this would be nothing. Hello. No, I'm joking. I lost track of her. I probably never saw her after that. But it's funny when you fly as a crew, and sometimes you get flights with really good energy. Especially we do these flights to the south, again, to these Cancun type places. And it's a bit of a party, jovial atmosphere on board. And you want to engage with your passengers and have a good time with them in a positive way. And
Yeah, especially like if you're on like some of those early morning flights, people have been at the bar at 6 a.m. and loading up before they're even on a flight.
Yeah. So as a crew, obviously, you're riding that balance to make sure you keep it within reason. And I've had some great convos, had some good laughs, and had some good times with a lot of passengers, hundreds of them, thousands even. And yeah, passengers will make the attempt to make a pass or flirt with crew members, absolutely. And do they hook up down line? Potentially. It's absolutely true. And you know what? Why not? If you are single and open and you find someone single and open, what's the difference between that and a dating app? I don't know. I guess no difference.
Yeah, I mean, you just swipe for your flight rather than swiping.
Yeah, exactly. That being said, you're only there for as long as your layover. So
yeah,
what are you getting yourself up to? That's to each their own. And again, as long as you're operating within your regulatory requirements, then each one lives their own life. Sometimes, though, crew members will take it too far. And I remember this one, not a ring, but Brazil, Sao Paulo, there was I think it was United or American flight attendant, and she was essentially prostituting herself on her layovers.
Oh, wow.
Terrible. Yeah. So she would go, I guess they would have, I don't know, whatever, 24, 48 hours. And she
wide body flight, I'd say at least probably 48, right? Coming from the States.
Yeah. So she'd bid these and she'd secure her schedule, and she must have had like a website or something, and she would have her regulars.
So essentially, call girl.
Escort call girls
on her downtime.
Yeah, exactly. Make her thing and then fly back, do it all again, however how many times.
And I'm sure. I mean, I'm going to guess that the job that she had probably was part of the advertising.
You know what? Good point. Yeah, that's part of that whole thing is, people in uniform and exoticness. Different country, different place.
Yeah.
So that happens, is still happening, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Right. And these people, are they toying with a bit of a dangerous life? For sure. Absolutely. I mean, who knows when things can go wrong when you start dabbling in that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there were any other crew member and passenger. You get a lot of commuters, that will run the same flights. They'll go back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of my friends, and this was a nice one, this one gentleman was always on the same flight every week. Was it a LaGuardia or something? Or maybe it was LA. I don't know. And this crew member was also bidding it just by coincidence. And eventually, they met and they met offline and they connected and became a couple later in life, which was great.
Yeah.
That's how people cross paths. Now the Ron,
And I know a friend of mine. I mean, he didn't necessarily, he wasn't a flight crew, but he was working for Austrian at the time, and he just happened to be on a flight one time and went to Buenos Aires and met somebody at a party who's now his wife, but given the fact that he was working for an airline, used a lot of staff tickets to fly between Vienna and Buenos Aires while they were still trying to see each other.
yeah, exactly. And you know what? You've touched on a good point. That's the one beauty of being an airline worker is you have the ability to travel. So, your dating locale has increased to be the world in theory.
Yeah.
Funny, I forgot a friend of mine from WestJet, very good friend of mine. He hooked up with who is now his wife. And how did they do this? Let me think. Was she on his flight? I don't think it was a flight hookup, but for something. Anyway, point being, she is based in Toronto. She's an esthetician in Toronto.
Yeah.
He is a flight and based in Vancouver. And to this day, they are married. She lives in Toronto.
He lives in Vancouver. Yeah.
And that's how their life and their relationship is based on that, because she just uses the flight benefit or vice versa. And they just bounce back and forth. I mean, it's 4 hours in between. And that's their life, and they've accepted to do that.
And I remember seeing, I can't remember the speaker's name off the top of my head, but it was like, yeah, she was married. She was in Tahoe, and he was in Calgary.
Yeah, exactly. So if you can make that work to your advantage, then
yeah. And I guess the thing is, it's like, well, on the road enough anyway. It's like, well, if I'm at home with you, I'm on the road, or if I'm home here on the road, it doesn't make a difference because I'm not going to be with you at that time.
Exactly. Yeah. I think of myself when I would go to Maui sometimes 3 times in a week, easily.
Yeah.
I didn't meet anyone in Maui, but if someone maintained that kind of schedule 3 times in a week for a dating kind of theory, sounds about right.
It could work. Yeah.
Like, people are busy, people have lives. Yeah. It's possible. Speaking of dating, this is when I was single. The days when Tinder came out, I somehow managed to outsmart it. Because,
okay, go ahead.
Right? The thing with these sort of dating apps, they're location based, and they need you to be in one spot for a bit of time for it to do its thing. But I was moving too quickly. So I'd ping here home in Vancouver. I'm like, oh, look, swipe, whatever. And the next thing you know, I'm in Toronto. Oh, okay, well, maybe I'll meet someone here. Okay, swipe. Nope, gone. Okay, now I'm in LA. Well, maybe, sure, why not? LA. Oh, nope, gone.
Yeah.
So either the system didn't have time to match me up with anyone, or people didn't have time to
match up with you
because I'm gone.
Yeah.
I'm not in the algorithm. So I just gave up on it. I'm like, forget it. I'm moving around too quickly. Although I heard years later that they made something called Tinder Pro, where you could search not on real-time location, but like actually define.
Oh, okay.
And you could just lock it out. I was like, oh, okay, well, that was too late.
If you're liking this episode experience, you may also enjoy experience 39. Crew life between flights. Crew layovers. It's available wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Now, passengers in the cabin, and this is kind of, the Mile High Club.
Yeah. And I remember, I think it was it Singapore or Virgin or somebody, when they introduced like suites on the 380, and they had something talking about, a fantastic experience, rose petals everywhere, this sort of thing. And then some people were complaining that, amorous activities were happening. It's like, well, you're setting up everything to get people into the position to be amorous. Now, don't be annoyed when they actually are.
Absolutely. Yes. When they brought out the 380, they had the first suites. the cabin suites in the front, and the middle two, because it's theoretically it's a 1-2-1 config. Those two, yeah, you're right. They could be joined to be pretty much a queen size bed. Well,
Yeah.
maybe not queen size, but like a two person sleeping
Yeah,
pod.
double plus.
And you're right. I remember the advertising. Yes, the rose petals, the ambient lighting, the sliding walls.
Yeah.
Like,
A
yeah,
couple bottles of wine. It's like, yeah, I mean,
what do
what
you
else do you
expect?
expect is going to happen?
But having been up there and seen how, what people don't realize that's missing from the advertising is it's all open up top.
Oh, okay.
The walls are only like 5 feet high. So if you're going to try and pull that stuff off, you better be damn good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've seen things go. I remember when my first months of being a cabin crew member, being a junior, we're on a night flight to Vancouver to Varadero. And I'm walking by and I'm looking at this one guy. I look down, I see his blanket in his lap moving. I'm like,
Okay.
okay. And I look at whoever's sitting next to him and I'm like, well, where's that person? I'm like, oh, I see what's going on here. So she is under the blanket in between his legs, doing her thing for him.
Yeah.
Under the blanket. But you know what? There was no noise.
Yeah.
The plane was black.
Yeah.
Everybody around them was asleep.
Yeah. Well,
So
and they're just fortunate that there wasn't any turbulence.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Can you imagine? So I immediately ran to the back. I'm like, oh my goodness. Can you what do we do? What are we supposed to? They're like, so the senior crewman was like, we all just laugh. We're like, well, we could like turn all the lights on and see what's going on. Or just give him, a couple more minutes and it'll be all over. I'm like, good point. So sometimes you just ignore the oblivious.
Yeah.
And let things go.
Yeah.
Sometimes
take the cart by and offer refreshments.
Yeah. Sometimes though, you can have some fun. So again, an unexpected flight. It was Calgary, Canada to Nanaimo, British Columbia.
Okay.
Yeah.
With jets or with propellers?
Jets.
Okay.
Yeah. It was actually it was an 800, a 737-800. I don't know why we were running the big plane on that, but anyway, we were doing that. The plane wasn't very full. And we saw this guy go into the rear lavatory, and we were all in back there getting, running service. And I noticed then a female go into the same lav. They didn't think I saw, but I saw.
Right, yeah.
I was like, oh, are you kidding me? On an Nanaimo flight in the middle of the day on a 737 in the back. Oh, for crying out loud. So immediately his crew.
The Nanaimo bar.
Oh, wah, wah, wah. That's a good one. So immediately, tell everybody, hey, guess what? So we're like, okay, this is ridiculous. So we all come to the back. I'm like, well, we have to do our work. Why don't we do a full bar cart inventory now, shall we? Let's take everything out of the carts back here with all the lights on. Essentially, we trapped them in there. And we're like, okay. Eventually, we got bored. We're like, okay, I guess we got to go do our job. But I think one of us stayed in the back. I can't remember who. And, oh, no. When we were back there being silly, they didn't realize, and they opened the door. And they saw, and then they like slammed it shut again. We're like, mm-hmm. I mean, I don't think they realized that we could just go in there at any point if we wanted. We can just unlock it from the outside, but we know what's going on inside.
Yeah. But I'm just like, good grief. I mean, it's tight enough for one person.
Yeah.
In a lav. I'm like, unless you enjoy, activities, inside like a broom closet or something.
I guess. And you know what? These lavatories on planes are not clean.
And they're nasty, some of them.
Yeah. I would not no.
Yeah.
I mean, already just going to the bathroom, period, is just its own thing. But I don't know. I don't get it. Anyway, eventually we got
I'm just
bored.
thinking of the gymnastics involved as well, and I'm like, I have no idea.
Yeah, exactly. Eventually, this girl finally left, and he finally left. And they looked like, how do I say it? Belittled. But they didn't make a big deal. I mean, we're not going to make a big deal. Like, what there's
Yeah.
nothing illegal, but actually, technically, there is something illegal about what they did in terms of air law. There's only one oxygen mask in that bathroom.
Ah, okay.
So,
In the event of a loss of cabin pressure.
yeah, yeah, they put themselves in a theoretical pickle. So that comes to mind. And that was it. I mean, the plane landed, they were giggling, they left for like, oh, maybe they continued on after. Who knows?
Yeah.
But they were two separate passengers. Like they were sitting in different seats. They weren't sitting next to, didn't come on together. So it's absolutely a pure random.
So maybe they caught eyes at the gate or something.
Maybe that the magic was there. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. Plenty of other ones. Let's see. I mean, shockingly, sometimes you discover the aftermath
Oh
at
no.
the end of the flight.
Yeah.
I don't think I need to say more on that one, but
It
let's
must
just
have
say,
been really nasty for airlines when they still handed out blankets a lot more than they used to. Or
well,
than they do
absolutely.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because who knows what people do with these things. I found wrappers
Mhm.
on planes. Oh, there was one though that was good. What was the destination? I think it was Vegas. Very suiting. So on, WestJet, as crew, we would groom our own planes.
Right.
So you kind of just go through clean. And I came to this one seat, and on the floor was a blister pack for pills. I'm like, oh, someone left. First, I thought it was a pack of gum. I turned it over. It was Cialis.
Okay.
I'm like, right. And obviously,
I was
one
going to say
was
it's either those pills or the other kind of pills that get
the
taken.
blue one. Yeah, yeah.
No, no. I mean, for the woman.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, guy must have taken one and get ready for his evening in Vegas. So,
Yeah.
why not? I guess. Too
What
bad he
happened
left
in
the rest
Vegas
on the
stayed in
plane.
Vegas.
Well, it didn't last long because once that pill was done, he left the rest on the plane. So that was the end of that. So one of the last good ones that I remember. So again, we were on our way to a hotspot, and I think we were mid-service, maybe we weren't. And suddenly the call bell is like just bing, bing, bing. And I'm like, is there a medical emergency? And we scan the cabin, nothing, no lights. We're like, what is happening?
Are they bumping the call bell?
Then the pilots call on their on the interphone.
Yeah.
And they're like, what is happening? The wall is being like this banging coming through the wall. We're like, what? We're like, oh no. So, and you talk about aircraft labs being small. I mean, on a 737, the forward lab is even smaller.
Smaller than that, yes.
So somehow, some couple was up there. I was on the back end of the cart. So the purser, she went to go figure out what was happening. And so now, when we hear multiple call bell ringing in a bathroom, we generally think, oh, this is an emergency.
Yeah.
So she like bangs on it. Hey, do you need help? And she could hear the banging. We're like, oh my God, someone having a heart attack. And she flies the lock open, opens the door, and all she sees is like bare buttocks and legs. And yeah, you nailed it. The foot was hitting the call bell and banging against the back wall of the flight deck. And this purser friend of mine, she's like one of these loud, boisterous types. She just like did that loud, like laughing scream, like hollering, bah, ha, 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 like slammed the door. And she's like, guys, enough. And that was the end of that. Yeah, it called the flight deck and they had a good chuckle out of it. They're like, oh man. Yeah. And because we were mid-service, we had the aisle blocked.
Yeah.
And the entire plane saw that we had to react to something up front.
Yeah.
Because we're all like mid-aisle, like, who's calling? Where's the problem? What's going on? While holding food and like trying to like, oh crap, are we like in the middle of something bad here? And so I think when they came out, they did the walk of shame down the aisle. Yeah. Yeah. That's how that went. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know when people make the decisions to do this. Is it a bucket list thing? The Mile High Club, probably for some people.
Yeah.
You mentioned aircraft labs, like yeah, on a narrow bodies, a 737. But some of the planes, out there will leave like the Emirates that has like the shower and you could do
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a conference inside the silly thing. But some
But
of
still,
the
some of the the wider body aircraft. I mean, the lab's a decent size.
yeah, I mean, I'm traveling nowadays with my toddler, and I appreciate going into a Dreamliner. I have tons of room for us, to do a diaper change and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I remember some of the A340s and A330s, airlines would opt to have a bank of lavatories in the sort of cargo hold level.
Hmm.
So you go down the steps to a bank of lavatories down there. And where I'm getting at is it's very private down there. You can bang on the wall all you want. No one will care. A bunch of suitcases on the other side.
Exactly.
So it's a good time. Whether you want to do it, it's entirely up to you. And when you see crew members out there, that's part of the life. It does exist. We can't deny it for sure. But things have changed for sure. Like we said in the beginning, the Pan Am days.
Yeah,
glory
like Catch It
days,
If You Can, Pan Am pilot with the cadre of flight attendants in tow.
Yeah, absolutely. Nowadays, it's a very well. Again, we're talking
Depending
from the
on where
North
you are.
American, North American European perspective. The rights and the regulations are all completely different. In some of the Asian carriers, it's different, modern, but who knows, right? So, to each their own, and that's the life of that club up there, high in the sky.
And I'm sure things must happen on some of those really like the what do they call it, Project Sunrise of a different type, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
London to Sydney, man, that'd be you need something to do. I'm done watching the IFE. I'm bored. What do I need? What can I do now?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we haven't even talked about private private aircraft crew.
Yeah, of course.
That's a whole another world. I mean, they're part of this as well. You got these like private jets that have like two pilots and one crew member, two crew members, and they have their hotels, they have their layovers, an
FBO, and there you go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
wild. Well, if the planes are rocking, don't bother knocking.
There you go. Which is pretty much all the time.
Yeah. All right. So what do we got going on in the news? I mean, there's a whole pile of stuff that went all crazy and sideways over the holidays here, weather and Southwest and Sunwing and
Southwest.
Goodness.
Yeah, I mean, scanning the news is just almost too much to talk about Southwest.
Exactly.
What a bad season they had.
Yeah. And then as I heard on the AvTalk with Flight Radar 24, they said, well, the chief executive officer, he can say a bunch of things, but what was his job before he was CEO? Oh, he was the chief operating officer. So he knew all the stuff that he introduced it that now he's having to worry about.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, man.
But
let's see. What do we have for news? So I have one here from Simple Flying.
Okay.
The tagline is aircraft making stops for fuel due to San Diego shortage. So what happened in San Diego is there was a fuel line that ruptured off airport. So there's a pipeline running in it, fuel in, and it had a leak. So they had to shut the fuel line down, which is pretty much the primary pipeline. So fuel had to be trucked in.
Oh, wow.
Avgas had to be trucked in. And the way it is, each truck could only carry enough fuel to support 2 flights from the West Coast to the East, which would mean that you would have to have hundreds of trucks.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. So they could only give enough fuel to aircraft to get the aircrafts to Vegas, LAX, or Phoenix.
Yeah, and knowing
stop and continue fueling.
The connection into San Diego there, I mean, it's not really good, like right off the freeway. Like you have some traffic on the streets, don't you? I think you have to kind of go through before you get to the airport.
Yeah.
So I mean, I can just imagine traffic. Oh, another tanker.
Yeah. So what they did is they capped fueling and just gave them the minimum amount. So
Yeah.
all flights suddenly had this random tech stop in one of those
Yeah.
cities,
Well,
which,
this happened last summer as well in South Africa. I think it was Cape Town had
hmm,
issues with fueling, and they all had to stop in Joburg.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this brings in a whole gamut of other issues, especially when you're talking long haul, crewing, crew duty hours, adding an extra hour or two
Hmm.
is critical and could throw the whole thing for a loop. I know British Airways
Yeah,
was
that's the one that came to mind
coming
for
to,
me for San Diego.
yeah, yeah, because they still fly direct. And I know Japan Airlines, I'm assuming they still do. I remember seeing Japan Airlines flying in there, having watched them on the tarmac. But that would be a significant thing. So, for a lot of the narrow body sort of intercontinental within US, that's one
Hmm.
thing. But what an annoyance. Imagine if you're going to let me think of something in the middle. Houston, Dallas,
Yeah.
you
Chicago even.
and you have to add this extra fueling tech stop. You've just like doubled the flight time, the flight time
Or what about,
experience.
say, like, Hawaiian, for example, that flies to the islands? Like, do they have to go up to LAX, fuel up, and then?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then go. Because you can't fuel on the way in because now you're
Mhm.
having landing issues of weight.
Yeah.
So it has to be on the way out. So that sucks. I'm not sure if it's been resolved just yet.
Or even like cargo airlines having to fly, say, Memphis or Cincinnati or that kind of thing. It's like, yeah, you got to stop and fill up your cargo plane.
Yeah, I know DHL has quite the operation out of San Diego.
Yeah,
Um, of course, FedEx, UPS must also have something going on there. So yeah, we'll have to check and see maybe in our next experience where that went.
sure,
This
absolutely,
thing I'm reading is 6 days old, so we'll see. Yeah, we'll follow that one up.
absolutely. And I've got one here for day trippers across the Atlantic. It looks like JetBlue is joining in. They're going to have a JFK to London Heathrow daytime service. So it'll leave JFK 0830 and then get into Heathrow at 2045 and then back, leaving Heathrow at 0825 and returning at 1140. And this will happen in effective March the 25th.
That route, I think I saw somewhere there's like 32 or 36 services daily.
Oh, wow.
The London,
London, New
New
York.
York. Yeah, including all airports.
Yeah.
Mind-boggling. I mean, obviously JetBlue's coming in with the narrow body service. Like narrow body on long haul. But anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, narrow body daytime, I could put up with, but I mean, narrow body overnight, I think would be where my issue would be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I know that they used to do wide body. Like I did the day tripper once from Toronto wide body. I don't think it's back in plans for this summer. Currently, the only one from Canada day tripper actually goes from Halifax to Heathrow.
Right.
Yeah,
And that's, marginally shorter. So
yeah,
it makes sense. Operates well.
yeah.
It has its purpose. So
And it's effective. I mean, I enjoyed it because you land and you can clear customs, get out, and have food and drink at a pub in London, and then go to bed and get up at your normal hour. Or if you're going the other way, it's
yeah,
like, all right. I mean,
exactly.
you're not losing that whole day with red eye and
Yeah,
sleep and whatever else. So
yeah, exactly. Sweet.
excellent.
All right. Well, that was a good run through some good stories there.
Exactly. Yeah. So, of course, that wraps up the Experience 069 of the Seat 1A podcast. If you liked this podcast experience, be sure to rate us and subscribe. Tell your friends and fellow travelers about us. Make sure you visit us at podcast.seat1a.org for complete show notes. That's Sierra Echo Alpha Tango, the number 1 alpha.org. Feedback, addenda, letting us know where we've messed up. You can send all of that to stories, STORIES, at seat1a.org. If you'd like to support the show financially, we have a page at Patreon, patreon.com/seat1a. Links are included in the show notes.
And here's what you can look forward to in upcoming Seat 1A podcast experiences. We are going to review our holiday 2022 travel experiences with airport hotels, some more interviews, and a refresher on ticketing. As always, we look forward to hearing your stories and your wild experiences. Or if you have anything you'd like us to discuss on this podcast, please do let us know.
So until the next time, I'm Jeff. Thanks for listening.
And I'm Vinod. You're cleared for takeoff. Have a great flight.